The book of love is long and boring. No one can lift the damn thing. It's full of charts and facts and figures and instructions for dancing. But I love it when you read to me, and you can read me anything. The book of love has music in it. In fact, that's where music comes from. Some of it's just transcendental. Some of it's just really dumb. But I love it when you sing to me, and you can sing me anything. The book of love is long and boring and written very long ago. It's full of flowers and heart-shaped boxes and things we're all too young to know. But I love it when you give me things, and you ought to give me wedding rings, and I love it when you give me things, and you ought to give me wedding rings. You ought to give me wedding rings.
Hello and welcome to our March edition of The Word in association with the ATU's Sligo Creative Writing and Literature course. I just want to welcome everybody here online and everybody here live with us to our first summertime edition, which is, the last few months we've been doing it in darkness, so it's nice to see the light air outside, the light night. We're delighted to have Pauline McLynn join us for this edition. Pauline doesn't need much of an introduction, I think we all are aware of her as an amazing actress, but she's also a brilliant author whose books are hugely popular here in the library, and she's written multiple novels for adults and novels for young adults, plays and short stories. Pauline will be in conversation with Dr. Keith Hopper. Keith is a good friend of the library. He's facilitated a number of our events of the Word. He teaches in the Writing and Literature course at ATU Sligo, and he's also an author in his own right. We will also we've had music so far already with Aileen Concannon and Eoin Troy. Aileen and Eoin will be performing a number of songs during the evening. They perform together throughout Sligo and have performed in Vicar Street and the Hawkswell. And we will also we'll then have our Q&A, audience Q&A, which you're all welcome to join into. And we'll have an open mic tonight, which will be facilitated by Kate, who's a student from ATU, I think. And now I'm going to officially hand you over to Pauline and Keith to take over and bring us a beautiful evening. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Pauline, you're very welcome. We should probably declare a personal interest from the start, get it out of the way.
Full disclosure.
We are first cousins.
Yes.
So
But not married.
not married.
It's
Yet. So Pauline's mother, the late great Sheila McLynn, and my mother Annette, who's over here, are sisters. So that's out of the way. But it's a good starting point because Pauline is a Sligo woman, first and foremost. You grew up in Galway, and then you went to Dublin to study at Trinity, and you were studying history of art and English.
Yes, and modern English even, which apparently is Shakespeare onwards. Now, I was a very poor student, I'm not going to lie to you. No, that's not true to say. I was a great student, but maybe not necessarily of the subjects that I was supposed to be studying at Trinity, which even in my day, like I was born in 1962, in Sligo General Hospital, as it's now known, Sligo Regional as it was then. So yes, 60 last year. Thank you, everybody, for that. I'm in denial about it, but there you go. You know, I was one of a generation where Trinity was the Protestant university. There's no way around it. And also had only had women studying in it from the 60s as well. So it was a miracle they took me because I only put one choice out of my CAO form, which was History of Art. That's to do with the quite mad and wonderful Sheila McLynn, my mum, who loved to paint, and modern English. And because I'd failed mathematics in my leaving cert by a mile, I nearly wasn't taken. I didn't have the points, but I did have a really good degree, a really good result in Latin. And Latin counted instead of mathematics, which is something that I think we should look back at as well. You know,
you can read in Latin later on.
I will, yeah. It's very logical, unlike myself, so it's great. But can I just say that just on the Galway end of having grown up there, obviously Sligo is where it all started, because both sides of my family are from here, from Emmett Place and from Napa Road, or Jinks Avenue, whichever you want there. But I grew up in Galway, certainly, and one of the great joys was going to the library, which in the old days was in the courthouse. So you walked into these really echoing marble halls, and you could smell the loos from downstairs, so nice smell of urine, and then surrounded by criminals. So a nice smell of wee-wee and infamy somehow, and then up these amazing marble stairs and into a world of magic, which was the library. And I'm a huge fan of libraries and librarians, indeed. Like writers, they are some of the most generous people you're ever going to meet. And obviously, any library is just a treasure trove because, you know, a lot of people, when they're looking for reference books and all, those are expensive things to buy, but they're all here in the library and free. So I will lie down in front of tanks for a library.
Good, we all will. Did you go to Trinity to join the Trinity Players, or was that something that happened when you weren't attending lectures?
It happened. It happened in my Freshers' Week. So Freshers' Week is where, you know, you go to a few introductory lessons, and they all say, or lectures, and they all say, look, don't be looking for a job out of this. And once you relax about that, and I went in 79 to 83. So when I left in 83 with a very, very, very middling arts degree, there were no jobs. There was nothing. It was a huge recession. So I was as useless as anyone with a qualification. It was fine. So I fell into drama, and it was because as well, in my Freshers' Week, the first stall that I came to was DU Players, which was the Drama Society. And I was lucky enough, it was kind of like, in some ways, a golden age, no more than you lived through in Sligo here, like you and Niall Henry and all the lads and ladettes were, you know, a generation that, because of when we were born and who we were born out of, got to then just blossom around the world. And now we're all back to go, hello, let's do it from here now. So, for instance, when I was at Trinity, Anne Enright was one of my comrades, and she is, of course, has been the laureate, you know, the writing laureate of Ireland and the whole lot, and a brilliant actress. I have to say that drama's, you know, literature's gain is drama's loss. She was extraordinary. There was nothing she couldn't do, and honestly, I still remember times when I looked at her acting and I'd be in the same show and think, I am not fit to kiss her garments, you know, the hem of her garments. Really brilliant. But she decided to put words on paper. And she's also a brilliant reader of her own work, which doesn't necessarily follow. I've heard some brilliant poets read their own work and just think, oh no, you've ruined that for me. You know, there's a reason why some people just write and other people show off. Because, you know, they don't go hand in hand.
So you were surrounded by great writers, great actors. I can remember seeing you, I think it was in the Peacock, you were doing Lorca in the Peacock.
Yeah,
and you were
Frank McGuinness.
You were very young, but you were an incredible, tragic actress. I mean, for someone... No, I remember...
I thought I was terrible in that. Well, that's great.
I was a young fellow from Sligo. I had never seen anything like it.
All right.
And then you got involved in TV and it all went downhill then. So you became known as but you became known as a... Let's get this out of the way. So if Pauline wins the Nobel Prize, the headlines in the Sligo Champion and elsewhere will be Mrs. Doyle.
Mrs. Doyle wins Nobel Prize for literature. Because that's what I want. Forget peace and all the rest of it. Although that would be nice too. The Lorca was... It's an incredible thing when you enter the world of books at all, either just with an interest or writing them or studying them or whatever, you meet the most interesting people. And like I, by accident, worked for a publisher called Wolfhound Press. A man called Seamus Cashman, a brilliant man who set up his own publishing house. And I saw, as the school holidays happened in Trinity, up on the notice board of the Drama Society, it said, wanted, research assistant, ring the following number, you'll be working in Malahide. And I was the first person to ring, and I was the first person to make the train out to Portmarnock, not Malahide. And I walked in the door of a semi-detached place, and he said, how I earn my money is I publish a guide to night classes, basically, in Ireland. This is before computers and the whole lot. Yes, I'm that old. And I said, oh, I'd love to do that, yeah. And he said, when can you start? I said, now. So I started, and then the whole of the rest of the afternoon was people knocking on the door saying, we're here about the job. And I'd already started. I was up on the phone saying, hello, are you in the French class in September? How many weeks? How much? And put it down. And like, it was a #1 bestseller for many years because that's how people found their night classes and leisure activities. And I once met a man who was the head of the folklore, the Thomas de Balder, who also was best-selling the Irish-English dictionary. Met him at a do once, and I said, hello, Mr. #1 bestseller. I too have 2 #1 bestsellers under my belt. He was lovely. We drank a lot of whiskey. It was mandatory at the time, and it was fabulous. But once you enter the world of books, you just realise what a rich world there is out there, which is why, of course, libraries are it. They're great. And when at Trinity, I do have to say this, and it was something that Seamus of Wolfhound Press used to hate, but because there is a certain clause in every publishing contract that happens in the UK and Ireland, you have to send 2 copies of every book you publish to the libraries. So Trinity, Cambridge, Oxford, they all get them. And it used to kill Seamus to send, free books away. But I benefited from that even in Trinity because you could call up books. And they used to send them in a taxi from a depository or a repository, I don't know which it is, for books, from Santry every day. And then, when you got really bold, you realised that wherever in the library where the Book of Kells is, if you asked for something from over there, they brought them down in an underground tunnel and over and into the library, the Barclay or the Lecky that you were in, and you were given them. Not even made wear the white gloves, if it was a certain kind of book. Just wonderful.
I still have Wolfhound books at home that you gave me. And as a teenager, to realise, you could actually write books. Books got published that people I knew wrote.
Yeah.
When did you think you were going to start writing?
It was an absolute accident. It was not on any... I don't have a bucket list really, except for things like I'd love to see the Grand Canyon. And I'd love to stand on the Great Wall of China and wave at the moon in the hope that somebody up there would see me, stuff like that. But I never had any burning ambition to be a writer until O'Brien Press, which was, a family house with Wolfhound for a while, them and Dolman. There was a triumvirate of them. I worked on their phones for them for a while, chasing money for a summer as well. It's all to do with the money, in fairness. And I don't know how any of them made a living. But I never had this. But O'Brien Press asked a whole load of the comedians in Ireland if they'd write funny novels for them. And because nobody knows what to do with me, because I hang around with the comedians the odd time, and I've done a lot of comedy acting, but I'm not a comedian and I don't do stand-up or anything, they didn't know what to do with me. So they said, "Oh, and you, would you like to write one of those?" And I thought, no, how could I do that? But it kind of got in on my head, and I thought, if I was going to write a book, what would it be? And that led to 3 books, some of which I see over there. They're kind of like crime capers featuring an Irish private detective called Leo Street, who's a woman, not a man. And she's named after a street that I passed by on the bus in Dublin. I just thought, what a great name for a gumshoe. It literally came from that. And then you find yourself on a roller coaster where people are expecting books and you have deadlines. And the important thing about that is the word dead is in them, because these aren't guidelines. When you have a deadline, that means you will be dead unless you produce the book. So it's, in its way, it's not the kindliest of things. But yeah, and I respond very well to a deadline. I think it comes from being a student as well, where you just go, shit, I didn't do my essay. I'm going to have to pull an all-nighter and get it in whatever form, and go there. The worst thing that happened to me, I think, kind of stems from that, from me starting to write novels, is that my husband started to take an interest in them. Like late on, I've written 8 novels for supposed grown-ups like myself, and supposed is the big word there. But he, around about novel 4 or 5 probably, he started to read the manuscripts. Oh my actual God! He would take out the red pen and just put great big X's through it, and then notes in the margin saying, "You're better than this." If there is a harder note to take, I don't know what it is. And I'd be going, "No, I'm not. That was the very best I could have done on the day." And I thought it was rather wonderful. And then he would take it apart as to why it wasn't. He knows all of my bad habits as a writer, and honestly would be a great editor if I ever finish another one. But harsh, very harsh.
In the blurb for the event that Michelle put up online, she mentioned the short stories you wrote for charity collections. So it's worth just even saying that Moments, which was in aid of tsunami victims, Magic in aid of one-parent families, Girls' Night In for Warchild, Yeats is Dead, which I highly recommend. That was Amnesty, wasn't it? And you're always involved in causes, children's causes, homeless charities,
I suppose Animal Rescue, yeah.
I suppose the
cruelty,
question is, where do you find the time to write and act and...
Sadly, not finding the time to write too much at the moment. I prevaricate too much. I'm an Olympic level prevaricator, you know. But it's funny you should mention about one of the short story collections was for Gordon Brown and his wife had lost a child very early on, a baby, and they put together a series of short stories, or a book of short stories, and I wrote one for it, and got invited to Downing Street for the launch of it, and it was just us writers, you know, whatever else. So, Lionel, or there were the various famous ones. I'll get their names all wrong at the moment, and I felt incredibly out of place, I must say. But it was airport style security. So we were in number 10 because the Blairs needed the space that's in number 11 because they had kids, whereas Gordon and his wife didn't need as much space because they just had one child at the time and had sadly lost one also. And they didn't like living there either, so they had a flat somewhere else. So anyway, on the night, we were in through airport security and I was just alone as I went in. So I got into the lift and I got off on the wrong floor. And I wandered into number 11. I know that, and nobody found me. So I wandered back again before I got shot, and up to the top. And number 10, you could see all of the marks, because the Browns weren't interested in doing anything that much with it. They had great paintings on the wall, because they could choose things from the National Collection over there. But there was very chintzy furnishings and wallpaper on one wall, and that was Norma Major. And then the word went out that the bathroom was still as the Iron Lady had left it. It was Thatcher's bathroom. So we all went in for a go at that. Yeah. I can tell you it was very white, just an ordinary white shanks, Armitage shanks thrown. And there was a little window seat beside the white bath where I presume Dennis Thatcher would have sat while the Iron Lady was having a bath. And we'd all come back and say, I came back and said, I drew the line at solids, which is odd as a colonial, but just the wee. None of us could confess to anything more.
This is not, by the way, the strangest gig we ever did. The strangest gig we ever did was actually in the House of Commons,
yeah.
of
Where
all
the
places.
Curse of Cromwell got you.
To launch a book that I had edited on Flann O'Brien, of all people. Yeah. Like Flann O'Brien couldn't make it up. And Pauline was our guest. And we didn't advertise it. So we're in a committee room. And they were debating a defence bill in the committee room next door.
There was
all
a
the
vote.
high Tories.
Yeah.
And when they heard Pauline was in the room next door, they all queued up. They abandoned shop to queue up to get Pauline's autograph.
And I went next door and voted for them giving nuclear arms to the whole world, because there was kind of a vote happening as well, wasn't there? We were let go wild in the Houses of Parliament. Yeah. Once we were in, nobody monitored us. It was extraordinary. Yeah, but Keith got caught by the curse of Cromwell thereafter, because in a very fine hostelry outside, you had to be taken home because he had pneumonia. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah. None of the rest of us caught it out of the Westminster place, but we did vote for some good things.
Yeah. Anyways, books. So
sorry, books.
So your first three novels, you started in first novels in 2000. The first of three with Leo Street, the detective, great detective. And then your most recent have been the young adult novels, Jenny Q, Stitched Up, and Jenny Q, Unravelled. Yeah. So strong female characters. Why Jenny Q? I mean,
I suppose, to be honest with you, I'd done, after the three Leo Street books, and it is a female protagonist. See the way I said protagonist, and more or less got away with it. The editor I was working with at the time said, is there something else there rather than continuing the series? Is there something else? So I started to write standalone novels, as they like to call them, in publishing. And I wrote altogether 8 of those. And then I ran out of stories to tell. And it was a strange time. I didn't feel it at the time. I just thought, I don't have another adult story in me. And because writers are honestly, endlessly supportive, one of them said to me, why don't you try writing for younger readers? So I basically wrote for someone my own age who's 13, and her name is Jenny Q. And I put like, not recipes, but like knitting patterns and the whole lot in the back of it. And it's her and her just trying to get through, being a teenager or about to be a teenager. And the reason I stopped, she's 13 always, is I realised that after that, you're into sex and drugs and the whole lot, and I just couldn't bear that somebody would come to me, probably a friend, and say, do you know what my daughter has just done because she read it in one of your books? I just thought, no. So I've kept her on the cusp of the great world out there as it stands. But I tell you what, they were no less difficult to write than the adult ones, because I think when you are dealing with younger readers, particularly 10 to 13-year-olds, they don't want to hear about a description of a house before you go into it. Go through the door and get on with the action. So, you gotta be on it the whole time. But I loved doing them. I really did. And this is the harsh world of publishing and the whole lot. I didn't get asked for any more of them, nor indeed for any more adult novels. Though, interestingly, being in a library and the whole lot, it is a different kind of world now. It's not just books that you handle anymore in libraries. It's books that you can listen to. It's audiobooks and the whole lot. And one of the reasons after the 3 Leo Street books, I then wrote a book called The Woman on the Bus. And a lot of it's set in Father Ted country down in County Clare, in a fictional place, but there are real places disguised as fictional ones. And I got asked to do the audiobook of that. So I went to Bath, well, lovely, saw very little of Bath, because from 9 till 6 every day I was reading this book. Oh, sweet holy Mary. I'm very good at reading other people's stuff, but my own... And it turned out that, and this is where the acting didn't kick in either, or where you realise your limitations. So, I write a lot of conversations, or I used to. Maybe not so much anymore. And the reason is, in The Woman on the Bus, she'd be in a pub talking to a whole load of people. There might be 5 or 6 people talking to one another. I've discovered I only have a high, a middle, and a low voice. That's it. And those would be the ones handed out in a conversation. And then the woman from the bus would arrive, and there was no voice left for her. So as I'm reading it, sometimes she's stuck on my head there. And sometimes it's way down there. It was bonkers. And I also discovered that, and I was doing it from the hardback before I got into this, the paperback edition. And I discovered that I used a phrase that should never be used in anybody's lifetime in any way. It was called sleep washed over him. It's never good. I used that not once but 3 times. I was editing as I went along. It was a nightmare. And I apologise to anyone who's either read the hardback of that book or listened to the audio that I did. So after that, I never set another book in Ireland because I thought, no, let somebody else do them. So they're all set in Britain from there, but always with one Irish character, just to put it up to the reader, because Irish accents are very hard to do.
So this is a good point to ask you to read.
I do have a little bit of one, which I put in for someone. And I haven't listened to this on audio, but I believe it's read by a woman who's done several of the books. And she's very, very good, but I don't know how she managed this. So in this particular book, this is Summer in the City. And it's basically my brother Phil, the youngest of us. I'm terrified of my two younger brothers because it's Pauline, do you know what you did wrong there? You know, they know exactly where I've gone wrong in my life. And, you know, and they also told me, you're not funny. And they're sticking with that. I think they're correct. But anyway, so I based a book because I've lived a lot under Phil's roof, indeed, in Stockwell in London, in South London. It's right beside Vauxhall and a few other places. And I set a book there where it's a cul-de-sac, the back of a cul-de-sac. So it itself is a cul-de-sac. And there's a woman living wild, you know, in her car or up a tree, depending. And all that anybody wanted to know in London is, where is that free parking space? I'm not even lying. But anyway, it doesn't exist, is what I had to tell them. So one of the guys who's living in a house there is a guy called Colin, and he's from Belfast. And I just made him Northern Irish because I know a lot of Nordies, and also because I knew it would be really big trouble for whoever got to do the audiobook. And also I do a shite Northern Irish accent, so forgive me, please. And I'm only doing it because there's a bit of swearing in it as well. I like that too. So Colin was appalled at the missive. He waved it at Stella as if it stank. They want to promote me. Isn't that what you've been angling for ages? Oh, yes, he sang, explaining the obvious to a cretin, but not a transfer too. It's not the Paris office then? No. They have crossed the line. Colin, you do not have a line, Stella pointed out. I do now. It's fucking Belfast. They want me to head up a new division in fuckity-fuck Belfast. He threw himself across Stella's desk. It could not be worse. Stella remained placatory. Is there no currency in returning to your hometown in triumph and wiping the eye of all who once knew you? Tragically, even that would not be enough. God, I spent so long trying to get away from all that. Was it the war? Oh, don't be fucking stupid, Stella. The war had nothing to do with me. I'm a privileged upper-class Protestant from off the Hollywood Road. The war never came near us. No, it's the whole scene there. I'll never meet anyone again. He began to hyperventilate. Do you know, when I was growing up, I thought I had it bad as a homo until I heard that there were only 2 lesbians in the whole of the town at the time and they didn't fancy one another. How grim is that? That was probably an urban myth, Colin. Belfast is really hip at the moment, you know? Yes. The point is, my family lives there. Nearly every last one of them. I love them to bits. I do. Because I can. Because I am hundreds of miles away from them. If I go back there, I'll have to see them regularly, which is out of the question. My fragile love would not survive the strain. Besides all that, I couldn't listen to someone with my accent all day long. I go clinically insane. Do you know how slowly some of the people round our way speak? Thank the dear Jesus, Lord God, our Saviour, that my poor father is dead, or this would surely kill him. His ginger faggot son come home to roost. He took a calming breath. The money is fantastic, of course. So, you'll consider it? Oh, yes. Oh, so many insults all in there, you know. And by the way, the story about the lesbians, I heard that for real in the BBC in Northern Ireland in Belfast, in the radio section. And I believe it to be true.
So apologies to all our friends from Belfast.
Yes, and all of the lesbian Belfast people here tonight.
All of your novels after Dublin and the Bus are all set in London. Is that right? Nearly all of them.
Yeah, well, one is the Missing You Already is actually set in Norfolk, a place that I've never been, although I'm assured by Norfolk people that I managed it fine. I'd love to visit. And the reason that one is in Norwich is just because our Norfolk is just, I thought it was a beautiful place. But it's also about I saw a programme on the BBC once on television about a woman who had Alzheimer's, and she'd been a brilliant editor. And so words were her thing. And her daughter made the programme with her as she lost the words. She couldn't, the thing that had made her most brilliant, she couldn't enunciate them or remember them anymore. And I just thought, well, like all kinds of dementia, it's an extraordinary and cruel thing. And so I put her straight in there and just put lots of stuff that I'd found out touring England as well, like a lot of Napoleonic soldiers that were prisoners, the art that they left behind, all sorts of stuff like that. And I just put them all in Norfolk. And it was amazing. I would go to talks and literary festivals, and people would come up to me afterwards and say, I've got Alzheimer's. Is there something you can tell me to do and everything? And I was, well, I'm not an expert, although I didn't know an awful lot about it by the time I'd written the book. But again, the generosity of people, and also when you mention any kind of thing like that, like strokes, cancer, Alzheimer's, or any of the dementias, people will come forward and tell you their stories, and all of which, with permission, I put into that book. I mean, and actually there are some great tips about how to live with somebody with dementia in there. But the generosity of people just sharing their stories, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think the Irish love books, isn't it? And I think, as I said to you before, like, it all starts in Sligo for me. Like, I think that one of the reasons we are writers and storytellers and all is because up till a short while ago, not everyone could read and write. There was an oral tradition, there had to be. Now, as it turns out, our great-grandmother and great-granddad, certainly on our maternal side, they could read and write. One of them was a Protestant, for goodness sake. And, so they could read and write, but that was, at that time, maybe not the norm. But now that it is, and we can write down our stories, it's no surprise to me that the Irish win, Nobel Prizes for writing and everything, because it's what we do. We tell stories. And I felt during lockdown, I talked to the artists of Leitrim at one stage, who were getting all kinds of awards, for living in Leitrim, not least. And it's a wonderful place. But I was saying to them, like, we are the ones who make sense of the times we live in. So there was never a time when art mattered more than during lockdown, when we could tell the stories, and we now do the stories as well, to report on how we survived, and we paint the pictures, and we make the music, and it's because, as Irish people, this is how we make sense of life, and that's why libraries are so important, because all of life is here, and it's just a treasure trove to walk into, isn't it?
So apologies to Leitrim people as well as the
yes,
people and the Belfast
lesbians and Leitrim. It's all the L's really tonight. I don't know who'll be next. Laois. Oh, there's a call in for Laois. I'm sure I have an insult for Laois somewhere. No, I sing the praises of lesbians and Leitrim. Yes, especially lesbians in Leitrim.
Rereading your work, Pauline, I mean, there is a great seriousness in your novels, and a great tenderness and a great generosity of spirit. I mean, I hadn't read it before, I apologise. The Time Is Now, which was your last novel for grown-ups. I think it's your best work by a long shot. It's got different, very modernist. It's got different timelines, so it's set in the 19th century, the 20th, 22nd century.
Yeah, there's the future, the past, the present.
I mean, there must have been an incredible amount of research there, because there is a great sense of empathy for, particularly, I think the most striking timeline is the young serving girl from the 19th century. Yeah. It really is a deeply moving piece of writing.
Yeah, I loved all that, and at the end, and it's kind of like a meta thing, and I don't normally get into all this, but her story is completely made up, whereas some of the people in the novel did exist, but that makes her no less real, and that's why I love books, But I did love the research of it, and I'll tell you, it happened because I had a little flat that I rented on Broadwick Street in Soho for many years, and it's where they found where cholera had started, a huge cholera outbreak, and there's a pub called after the doctor who discovered it was in the water, John Snow, and it struck me that even though I was in, I suppose a little almost Stalinist looking little 50s, 60s flat, I wondered who had lived in this structure beforehand, or this building. And there is the idea that everything that we do, everything we said, it's still happening all around us at the time. Like where I'm sitting at the moment in this ex-church, like stuff has happened and it's still happening all the time here where I'm sitting. So time we're just not tuned into all of the things around us that are still happening always in this moment in time. And sometimes when there's a cataclysmic moment in time, it's like it makes its mark on time, just like in the old days when everything was on film, when you took a photograph and you made the mark on the negative. And it's kind of like that with time. So I just went with that, and I wondered what has happened in the past, today, and in the future in this very place. And it's kind of like, I know it's a hackneyed phrase, but it is almost like my love letter to Soho in London, which is one of the most magnificent and changing places. But the little girl, she's a serving girl, and she minds a child of a richer person who hears music from the future, but she hears it in colour because she's got a kind of synesthesia, and she's actually hearing some drag queens in the 60s playing I Can't Give You Anything But My Love by the Stylistics. That's not a spoiler, believe me. You'll go, yes, when it happens. And, I just thought, let's go there. And it's the one I'm proudest of is that particular book, and I recommend it to you. The time is now. Yes. If I could write another one of those, I would die very happy.
You should. Yeah. Speaking of time, it's time for Q&A. If people have any questions for Pauline, there is a roving mic, I think.
Oh.
So if anyone wants to put their hand up and grab the mic.
You can ask a question about anything, don't worry. I can lie about many, many subjects. I wasn't lying up till now, but I might start now.
From County Leitrim, and I just want to say thank you so much.
It had to happen. Oh, my word.
Yes, I'm from County Leitrim, and just thank you for coming to County Sligo, and thank you very much for all your literary and comic and everything. Thank you so very much for all your help with all you've done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I do love Leitrim. Isn't Leitrim where, in fact, Glencar Waterfall is, even though Sligo likes to claim it? Yes. So, that alone, Leitrim wins.
in the form of Glencar waterfall.
Oh my word, that's almost like there's Sligo claiming the water of Sligo that Leitrim is stealing. It's kind of like, you know, the way Cork, for possibly very good reasons, thinks it's the capital of Ireland, or it should be anyway. And when they're slagging Dublin off, the only way you can explain it is you'll see big headlines saying, Cork man killed by Dublin train. Now, it could have been pulling into Cork station, but, you know, that is as nothing. So, Sligo and Leitrim, somewhat the same. What? I can't have covered everything,
questions?
surely. Did I? He says he works in the library, this guy. Anyway.
Now, Pauline, you don't believe everything you read on the internet. So I hope you're going to set me straight on this. Are you an Aston Villa fan? And why?
I am. Oh, that's tough. At the end of what was a lovely evening. Well, it's not the end of the evening
she
yet,
is an Aston
but
Villa
you're going to
fan.
have to raise the audience after this. Yes, I am. I wouldn't say I'm a fan as much as a supporter. When I went to college, to Trinity, to the Protestant University, I kind of, because I was so busy out gadding about, like, for instance, the History of Art department used to send my assignments over to the student theatre and go, you're doing, you know, you have to present the Frank Lloyd Wright tutorial next Wednesday, because they knew I'd never be in to see that it was my turn, so they'd send them over. Very clever. And we also had, and I must say this, I'm not dodging the Aston Villa question, I had a brilliant professor at college. Look, everyone, if they can, should go to college. And I was 4 years, which was ideal for me, because I never missed it then afterwards. 4 years at Trinity. So I majored in history of art, and there was a brilliant professor there at the time called Professor Anne Cruikshank. And she was a specialist in 18th century British painting, so I took her module for the end of it and got a great trip to London with her and the whole lot. But while she had been Anthony Blunt's favourite pupil, and Anthony Blunt was famously outed as one of the spies. So there was Burgess McLean, the one that I always forget. Philby, thank you. Kim Philby, how could I forget Philby?
It's in your book.
And yet, I've obviously used those brain cells for something else now. I recycle a lot. But, and Anthony Blunt, the keeper of the Queen's paintings for a time, and he was outed as a spy, a Russian spy as well. But they always said there was a fifth man. And she had been his favourite pupil when she was studying. So she got papped everywhere she went for one part of one of the years when we were there. So my professor they tried to out her as a spy. I still don't know if she was or not. She laughed it off. So I like to think she was. But, you know, the rest of us, we were so thrilled that we might have been taught by a spy, a Russian spy, but then slightly insulted that we never got the tap on the shoulder. You know, no one that I know of was recruited to spy while I was at Trinity, but then again, that's the nature of it. I probably do know lots of spies, but they're not allowed to tell me.
So Aston Villa.
Aston
This
Villa.
is going to be Father
Okay.
Tate.
So I kind of lost sight because I was gadding about with drama and fellas and sadly no one from Leitrim while I was at Trinity. And when I came out the other end, a friend of mine said, I should be a Liverpool fan because I was deeply devoted to Steve Highway when I was a kid. And he never scored a goal for Ireland, says everyone that I say it to. But anyway, when I came out the other end of fellas and scraping a very, very ordinary 2-2 degree out of Trinity, a friend of mine said, look at all the Irish internationals are playing for Aston Villa, we should probably follow them. So we did, and it's tragic. We still follow them, and it's tragic because claret and that sky blue, very hard to wear. Very hard colours to wear. They're like, honestly, they'll never be haute couture. That's all I'll say. Yeah. So there's the answer, you bags, for asking me that. Now.
Time maybe for one more question, I think.
I'll just say, first of all, I'm from the border between Roscommon and Leitrim, and we do like to pretend that Leitrim doesn't exist. We may be bad, but we are not as bad as Leitrim people.
I've opened a can of such worms here.
Also, so I'll just say, I saw you on the train when I was coming down today. I was sitting across from you, and I was like, the first
You
thing
were, I remember your hair.
Yeah.
You didn't get off, or you didn't get on in Dublin.
No, I got on in Carrick, which is before the bridge into Leitrim, by the way. It's technically Roscommon. So my first thought when I saw you was, oh my God, it's Mrs. Doyle. You know, that's the way everyone thinks. So
Sadly,
my
yes.
question, I suppose, would be, are you bothered that you're always associated with a part that you played rather than your writing?
No, when I said sadly you recognise Mrs. Doyle, it's only because I always thought she was older than me, but now
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I've kind of caught up with her. No, I'll tell you what, as we were talking about writing here tonight, the scripts for Father Ted arrived perfectly formed, and the only time that I can ever remember something happening to one of them was because it was too long, so two lines got cut from, I couldn't even tell you what the two lines were, got cut just for time reasons, that's all. They were the most beautifully crafted, beautiful things. You can get a book of the scripts, actually, you print a book of the scripts, and they're like a master class in how to write comedy, and I don't know how it's done. To be honest with you, I sometimes think that just because you might have written books doesn't mean you can write sitcoms or plays or anything like that. Because I actually think for a sitcom, I think you need to be genetically predisposed to be able to do it. The way we used to be with Eurovision in Ireland, but sadly we've lost that as well. And I'm not an ambitious woman at all. But the one thing I would have loved to do was to present Eurovision, because I'm basically a gay man trapped in a woman's body. My musical taste is all Eurovision, basically. But because we never win it anymore, there's not even a chance I could approach a broadcaster and say, please let me present Eurovision. But fingers crossed for this year. But no, on the Mrs. Doyle thing, like, if people love it, it's because it's brilliant. It's honestly, and you can't, go, I don't want people shouting, will you have a cup of tea at me on the street? As long as they have the cup of tea to give to me, which very rarely is the case, can I just say. But, it's just what a thing to have been part of, what a pleasure. And what, what a great thrill it was that they trusted me with their words. So no, it was fine that you looked across and saw Mrs. Doyle. Although, as I say, in my head, I'm not her age at all. So, yeah, the years have not been kind. I think that's what we can say.
You won't get to introduce Eurovision. Do you want to introduce Eoin and Aileen for the final song?
I would.
That was good, wasn't it?
Oh. So,
second song.
oh, his second song, yeah. Eoin and Aileen will sing for us again. Yeah.
Thank you, Pauline.
And the Book of Love isn't that boring, is it? By the way, read the first song.
The love.
It probably is. You're right. I'm married a long time. It is. It's a little dull at this stage. Sorry, Richard.
This is now we're going to sing one of my own songs about the constant changing nature of life, especially for you, Pauline.
All right, so
Called "Hold On."
move.
Don't you cry, hold your head high. It's not the end. When everything right gets turned on its side, it's not the end. When there's nothing left but sound and the whole world keeps on turning, don't forget to hold on to impossible. not the end. And when the die has been cast and you're holding fast, it's not the end, just an interlude. When there's nothing left but sound and the whole world keeps on turning, don't forget to hold on to impossible. When you barely touch the ground and all around is falling, hold on to the ethereal. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. It's not the end. Won't you just hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. It's not the end. When there's nothing left but sound and the whole world keeps on turning, don't forget to hold on to impossible. When you barely touch the ground and all around is falling, hold on to the ethereal. And don't you cry, hold your head high. It's not the end.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask Kate now to come up and present the open mic. Thank you.
Hi. What a wonderful night, no? Been so funny. So our first reader today is Paul Richardson. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Paul Richardson, and I'm going to read a passage from my book, Echoes of Navarre. This is the first book I've written and published, and it's an espionage thriller. Now, it's called an Alex Spellman novel, but this passage is to do with his partner facing up to her fears. So, as Deanna reached the bottom stair, she felt around for a light switch and found it round the corner on the wall to her left. She flicked it on and waited for the room to illuminate. The strip lights flickered, casting brief flashes of light over the murky room. What she saw in the strobing light made her draw breath. It looked just as if the floor was writhing and moving, alive with something. As she concentrated on the image in front of her, she realised that the floor of the basement was covered in a layer of water, and in this water were black objects, moving incessantly from one place to another. Her heart sank. Rats. She hated rats. But she could see where she now needed to go. The power grid controls she was looking for was on the far wall. All she needed to do was cross the floor and shut off the grid for the building. It took her a few moments to build up the gumption to begin the short crossing, knowing that in reality the rats were more likely more afraid of her than she of them, but that didn't make it any easier. The thought that they would attack her and begin taking chunks out of her ankles, running up her clothes and nipping at her fingertips kept jumping to the front of her mind. She had read James Herbert's Rat trilogy too often as a child, and now she was regretting it. As she waded over to the power bank, in the brief flickers of light, she could see in actual fact that the rats were clearing a path for her, and she relaxed slightly at the realisation. She approached the grey metallic boxes lining the wall and realised she didn't know the first thing about what she should be doing. If her fuse box at home was anything to go by, all she needed to do was pull the switches down to turn them all off. With sudden realisation, she knew that cutting the power to the building meant cutting to the power to the room where she now stood, a thought that filled her with icy dread. No matter, it could not be avoided. She would need to get her bearings and know exactly where to head once the power was cut. She looked back to the stairwell, noticing that the rats were now swimming to and fro across the path she would soon be travelling. She felt nausea rise in her chest at the thought. It was silly, she knew, but humans must have an instinctive fear of vermin for good reason. Deanna began pulling the switches. Each box had an arm in the upright position, so she started at one end and pulled each one down as she walked along the bank of cabinets, not knowing which one would be the one to plunge her into darkness. She found herself holding her breath every time she pulled the arm, feeling like she was playing a type of roulette. By pure fortune, she reached the sixth cabinet and the light still flickered. She now knew this would be the one, so she looked around once more to get her bearings and then pulled the arm down. The room was now inky black. It was as if she had been plunged into a barrel of tar. The hairs on the back of her neck tingled and she became acutely aware of every sound of movement in the room. She could hear drops of water she had not noticed before, the rats making a paddling noise as they made their journeys to and fro, and the hum of the electrical machinery was now conspicuous by his absence. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Our next reader is Betty Gothamzida.
Hello. I'm a student at ATU Sligo in the Writing and Literature course, and we're currently doing a module with Alice Lyons on poetry, and I'm a bit too small for the microphone. What? Can I? Oh, okay. It's fine. Yeah, tech. Yeah, thank you. And I'm already wearing heels. Oh my god. I wrote this poem for one of our last classes, and I experimented a bit with the sestina form. So yeah, here goes. The title is Only the Rain. Standing in the garden, I watch my poppies weigh their heads. Behind me stands my castle, hosting flower beds in which I grow strawberries, scarlet sweet and bitter bright. I walk along my path, breathing summer air, listening to the quiet. My blood chills as I pop berries in my mouth, reprieve at night. There I stand in peace until the light of dawn caresses the morning sky, and to my feet marigolds open wistful heads, sleepy, dripping morning dew like tears, wetting my feet, and I turn heavily towards my castle. Gingerly I step around the slugs and back onto the path that leads me ever steadily past the big orange tree. I pluck one before I turn to the banana plant, and pluck one from there too. Sunrise seen from my study, where I sit sweaty after hiking up 300 stairs, wakes the many dandelions dotting the walled treasury I've come to know as my home. The brightening sun stings my eyes, and forward crawls a tear. As I look above the walls, and to the green behind, another falls. Quickly, I eat up my breakfast, popping grapes into my mouth. A servant girl brought them from home. In addition to the fruits I plucked, there I sit now until noon, reading, signing, writing correspondence within my ivy castle walls, while secretly my heart is longing for a way to escape these trials, maybe find a hidden path that I do not yet know of. It's so hard to fight this ache pounding in my soul. Anytime I try, I see forget-me-nots blooming near the pond. Then they serve me blueberry muffins for dessert, your favorites, I remember. Sunset comes slowly at this time, growing from the palace, shadows growing from the palace, hungering for what was once our home. I hear them feasting, slurping, sucking up our light. No way leads me past them when I walk at dusk to our shared bedchamber. Moving sluggishly at first, my blood has the nice habit of waking me with starts to these plum-scented sheets and a brittle memory of a bouquet of lilacs. I dream the colors of the shifting sky are now your home, that flowers grow between your toes on whichever path you tread, and that your tears fall as you reach for me whenever I pluck strawberries. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Next we have Ava Liange.
Thank you. I'm a second-year literature, writing and literature student, and also a poem I wrote and that I'm going to read to you, hopefully not ruin it with my reading. I called it Lolita's. How old were you when you first put on lipstick? What age made you see the red like a sharp knife ran on your lips? They called you a flower. Your eyes started to water. How old were you? Then your hands dry at the touch of the sweet strawberry dish soap. It felt like it left a sugary taste in the sink. Vanilla body butter, chocolate lip gloss, cherry perfume, the recipe for the cake, the white dress, golden curls, itchy beard, sweet rain, cold floor, white teeth, warm blood, fine deodorizer, the recipe for love, a quiet smile, big laughs, big bear, sour taste, wipes, cotton, big hug, flowers flowered, silent tears, a quiet stare, bringing a new world to lose yours. How old were you when you had to walk faster? Dreaded no for years, but he's so nice to you, isn't he? He's a brilliant doctor, artist, politician, mechanic, father. Can you feel the river thriving from under your chest? You first bit your tongue and bled all over your pearls, little baby teeth. How old were you when you first ran? Could you run away from your own body? There's a little bow on this thong, baby pink. Can you give what was never yours? How old were you when you first screamed? Have you ever screamed? How old were you when you met the men who love women? They love the beautiful skin, smooth like baby powder, the young body of the mythical nymph, the virginal child. They love the innocent laugh. They like them young, fresh like garden roses. They loathe the women with silver hair, shining wrinkles, the devil in their eyes. The men who love them smiling peacefully, sleeping peacefully, lying peacefully, whispering quietly. These men who love women from Rachel to the maid, like the woman looking through windows, dreaming silently, her beauty fixed in his paintings. For a woman is never as beautiful as she is in her silence. That's how we like them. Dead, 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 dead.
Thank you, Ava. And our last reader for tonight is Bridget McMurra.
Hi, I'm also a second year writing in literature. We all just decided to read tonight. This is a poem I wrote a few months ago about the youngest mother in recorded history. Let's talk about flowers, bright, beautiful beings opening up and reaching from below to graze the heavens. Rising from in between the cracks of the concrete, individual petals gasping for sunlight so they may become bigger and bolder, so the stamen can entice, spread forth, and bring more tiny flowers to grow big. But when the flowers are trampled, stood upon brashly by large black boots, punching them back below the surface. This isn't about flowers. 5 years old, 6-pound baby, cesarean because of too small pelvis. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to say a massive thank you to Pauline for joining us this evening. I can officially say that we can officially call Pauline an Irish icon after this evening. She's just fantastic. She was amazing. She was brilliant. I'm not going to call her a legend because she's already paranoid about her age and she's not a legend, she's an icon. So, I also want to thank Dr. Keith Hopper for providing a brilliant backdrop for the evening and the right tempo as well, and being generous to give her loads of time to talk, and it was just fantastic. Thank you, Keith. I'd like to thank Aileen and Eoin for joining us and providing a brilliant soundtrack for the evening, which is just fantastic. And thank you, everyone, for joining in with the Q&A, and thank you, Kate, for presenting the open mic, and for everyone who took part in that. You were just brilliant, fantastic. And we might see one of you up here in one of these seats someday soon, hopefully. Our next edition of The Word will take place on Wednesday, the 26th of April. It's a slightly different kind of event. In January this year, we lost our former county librarian, John C. McTiernan, who was also a local history and wrote multiple books on Sligo and its surroundings. So we're having a special evening on Wednesday, the 26th of April. It'll be a panel discussion, and we'll feature historian Michael Farry, Fiona Gallagher, and we'll also have music with Bridget on the night. So that's on Wednesday, the 26th of April at 6:30. If you want to look at previous editions of The Word, where we've had Donald Ryan, Louise Kennedy, so many other brilliant authors over the last few years, you can just go to our Sligo Library YouTube channel and look at them there. And I'm just going to hand you over now to Aileen and Eoin for the final song, and just say Garamagad Agus Lawn, and enjoy the lovely bright evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you for the invitation for Michelle and Sligo Library. This has been, we've been in excellent company. Thank you so much. We'll finish up tonight with a song by Tom Moore called Send This Whisper.
Send this whisper to the one I love. Tell her dreaming's not enough. Brings on back the kind of memory. If she's dreaming now of me. Time and time again I sigh and I cover up my face. Count the hours again and smile for you and another place. 3 more weeks and then it's Avalon. Think of leaving, dream of sailing on. Cross the waters with my bridges gone. Back to you. Send this whisper to the one I love. Clouds that cross me high above. Don't let it wake her from her reverie. If she's dreaming now of me. Time and time again I sigh and I cover up my face. Count the hours again and cry for you and another place. 3 more weeks and then it's Avalon. Think of leaving, dream of sailing on. Cross the waters with my bridges on. Back to you in Avalon. 3 more weeks and then it's Avalon. Think of leaving, dream of sailing on. Cross the waters with my bridges on.
Thank you.
Thank you.